Hello, Holliston. Welcome to another episode of Just Thinking. I'm John Cronin. Today we're going to have a conversation about a very important article coming up at this fall's town meeting. On October 20th, the town will gather to discuss over 19 articles associated with town business. Article 15 is associated with the Public Works Facility, a much-discussed project. We thought following our last episode discussing all the articles would bring in some experts associated with this process and this project. Joining me tonight are Ben Sparrell, Chair of the Select Board, and James Keast, Holliston Facility Director. We thought that we'd take some time to dig a little deeper into this article and help you learn more about what you may be voting on Article 15. So briefly, good evening, gentlemen. Nice to see you both.
Good evening.
Before we get into some questions, I thought I'd read the articles to kind of set the table. To see if the town will vote to direct funds previously appropriated through Article 19 at the May 2025 town meeting for the feasibility, engineering, and design studies for a public works facility to be used for said purposes at the existing Arch Street location, and to also include environmental assessment of the site as acceptable expenditures. Take any action relative thereto. Well, welcome. Thanks for joining me. I hope you're doing well. We have a series of questions. I thought we'd just get them right out of the gate. So Ben, if you don't mind, I'll throw the first one at you, and James, feel free to contribute anything that comes in, and we'll keep going. Ben, why do we need a new DPW building? And discuss what's wrong with the current facilities.
Well, thanks, John. Thanks for having me today. And I will just say that I am no expert. The gentleman to my left is actually the expert here. I am just an elected official who's doing my best to serve the needs of the town of Holliston. The reason why we need a new DPW facility, there's several reasons. The first one is that the existing facilities, we have one on Central Street for the water department, and we have one on Arch Street for the highway department, and they're both well past their useful life. They're old facilities that are not in great shape, and they need to be replaced for certain structural reasons, certainly, and then also for efficiencies within the ability to have two departments that are working under the same leadership under the same roof, and to be able to create efficiencies rather than having. You don't need two sets of bathrooms, two sets of locker rooms, two sets of repair rooms or garages. We can do all those things in a single space, and I think so. It's really efficiency, and it's also replacing old facilities.
So certainly over the last several years, a lot of voters may have heard that pitch. I think they get the idea we need a new DPW. In fact, they voted for an override on a previous project.
Correct.
There's been a lot of public discussion about this. This project, including more recent public meetings. Generally, what's the Select Board learning?
I think the big thing that we learn about in this process is the passion with which the voters and the people who live in Holliston care about their community, and particularly their neighborhoods. And we hear a lot of conversation about environment and how this type of facility would impact the environment. And it would also impact water quality has certainly been something else that's come forward. And we, I did a lot with Envisioning Future Holliston and the surveys that we had, and I learned a lot from those, and water rose to the top in that particular survey, and I'm really seeing it in particular vividly as we go through these forums and discuss some of these different locations.
I think that's an important word, location, because the Select Board has kind of addressed or grappled with multiple different locations, to name a few, which leads us ultimately to Arch Street. We'll get to that in a minute. But I think it's important that folks understand, like, where did this journey begin? Like, generally speaking, how long have we been talking about this, Ben?
It's been about 5 years. I remember when I was still on the Finance Committee in 2019, the Select Board tried to bring an article forward for a feasibility study, and it wasn't until I believe 2021 that we were able to finally get the feasibility study done. I might have my timing wrong in there. It was somewhere in there, 2020, 2021. So we've been talking about it for about 5 years in different locations throughout the process. We've had a few lulls where we've had a little bit of quiet, but we've basically on and off since.
Right. I concur. As folks may know, Ben and I are former colleagues on the Select Board. I was on the board when this project sort of surfaced, and a lot of it was driven by the realization that from a facility perspective, what we had was not measuring up, and I think you touched on that. And I recall at one point the board said, well, let's get a closer look. Let's get not a bird's eye, but an on-site evaluation done on the conditions at Arch Street, where our Public Works is and has been for quite some time, and Water Street, which is an old foundry, by the way. It was repurposed, Central Street, which was repurposed into its current use for the Water Department. And I think we commissioned you, James, to come up with some effort to do a facility assessment. Do you recall doing this?
Yep. I did this in the summer of 2021, and so that was 4 years ago, a little over 4 years ago. What I did is I evaluated the exterior building envelope, structural, just a visual structural review of the buildings, and also reviewed the interior, all of the sort of fixed assets, HVAC equipment, plumbing equipment, and every one of those items within Arch Street were in failed condition. Central Street was in a little better condition, but I would put that in poor. The items at the Arch Street location, as I said, were in failed condition, and they have not improved. We're doing what we can to keep the operations going, but it's quite a challenge to balance between putting money into something to keep it going, but also being good fiduciaries of taxpayers' dollars, because we don't want to buy a new boiler. We don't want to put on a new roof. So we're patching these things because we know ultimately these buildings will come down.
Right. There's reasons for the fact that 4 years ago you did an assessment and things aren't getting any better. We'll get to that in a minute for sure. I think we understand that some factors are beyond our control. But let's talk real quick about the money. The town approved money for a new facility, didn't it, Ben?
That's correct.
What happened?
In it was 2022. I was the chair of the select board at the time. Might have been 23. Mine's a little cloudy.
It's 23.
Thank you. I went in front of town meeting and asked for the town to approve Cross Street as the location for a new facility. 43,000 square foot facility. We went through an entire process with the finance committee and a working group to develop a financial plan to try to minimize the impact on taxpayers, and we got Cross Street approved at town meeting, and got the money set aside through a debt exclusion and through some capital set aside, and then we went to the ballot box and asked voters to approve a debt exclusion, and it was approved pretty resoundingly. And then we waited, and Cross Street is still in land court. So
before we get to the land court piece, just one element here, Ben, that feeds into Article 15. The Cross Street project, and you mentioned the square footage, was a fully studied initiative that the town understood it was getting. They had an estimate of cost. They knew how it was going to grow for cost. And as you mentioned, the square footage, they had an idea of how big it was going to be. And there was general consensus that the location was thumbs up, that the money was urgently needed, given the conditions that James has talked about. And ultimately, the voters agreed that although it was expensive, because nothing's cheap, it was something we wanted to do. So there is a program that we paid for that fits on Cross Street. And the program that the voters are going to be asked to talk about on October 20th is different. I'll leave it there because we're going to get into what that is in a minute, but that's an important piece to know. We had something here that's being modified. It's being right-sized. James, is that a good word? To befit the latest location, because, as Ben started to say, what was planned to be a solution at land court, at Cross Street, is now caught up in land court. I don't know if you have a lot of insight into why it is being delayed in land court. Did you want to add anything more to the fact that it's just there?
Yeah, I mean, it's been in land court. They've been looking for title records, and I think there's challenges with finding the information and satisfying the court, as far as I understand, and the process continues. And we hear sometimes rumblings that it might come out sometime, but it's still there, and I think 20 years it's been in there, something like that.
When it comes out, what happens?
When it comes out, it becomes owned by the town, because the town's going to take over it. But like all locations in town, nothing's perfect, nor is this site. because the former use of that site has contaminated the area.
Which we knew.
Which we knew. And since 2023 to now, further analysis determined that it's a little worse than previously thought, and it's going to take time to clean it up. At the time in 2023, we had commitment from the EPA, government organization, to fund the cleanup of this site.
And very briefly, the cleaning is related to the previous use and occupancy of the land some time ago, now raised, long gone, but there was subsurface soil contamination.
That is correct. That is correct.
And I don't recall what it was, but the contamination has been monitored, James, safe to say?
Yeah, it has been monitored, hasn't been monitored in some time. It is one of the earlier Superfund sites, around. And so we have a lot of support from the EPA as well as the DEP to clean this site up. But based on the latest findings, it's going to take much longer in terms of time to clean it up. And some estimates now are saying close to 10 years, which isn't a bad thing, but doesn't help us with the immediate need with a new DPW facility.
So that timeline is something we did not know back in 2023.
Correct.
That's correct.
We informed the voters that we were going to study it. We were going to try to get access to the property. We didn't own it.
Right.
A lot of it was contingent upon green lights turning in favor of the community.
Right.
While the location is still highly preferred, and the fact that if it does come to us via land court, the acquisition cost is preferred, is zero. We have some challenges with environmental impact, and I hear you loud and clear. That's good enough reason for the select board to say, look, I've got diminished facilities here at Arch Street and Central Street, growing more and more diminished every day. We've got to do something. So certainly since then, the last couple of years, you folks have been busy.
If I could add one component to that, each year we wait because of inflation and cost escalation in terms of construction and materials. The cost for a building that was proposed in 2023, if you were to build that in today's dollars, is much higher.
Sure.
Right.
Nothing goes down.
Nothing goes down, unfortunately.
No.
Appreciating the dynamics of really where we've been and how the arc of the project has brought us to this point, the article looks like it's going to fund the latest proposal on Arch Street, which some people may be familiar with if they use the rail trail. You pass right by this Public Works location, which we've occupied for some time at the back of Mudville, down near Lake Winthrop. James, a little bit to you on how can this new facility, which Ben stated was around 43,000 square feet, fit on that lot? And how does that play with all of the existing operations? In other words, we had planned to put something over on Cross Street on a vacant lot, easy breezy, build it, move. But DPW has to keep doing what they're doing. So where are they going to go while this particular facility is built up if Article 15 is approved?
That's a great question, and it would be a challenge. It will definitely create some logistical challenges and add to the cost of the project. Currently, the thinking is that the front section of the DPW yard is currently a grass field, would house some temporary trailers, basically construction-type trailers.
So still on Arch Street.
Still on Arch Street. But the challenge is going to be where to put all the vehicles and the equipment that's within the buildings that are ultimately going to be torn down. And so we'll have to try to scatter those throughout the site, but more than likely they will have to be redeployed to other areas in town, maybe some in the school parking lot, some at the 1750 parking lot. I mean, the vehicles are going to be unfortunately exposed to the elements outside and scattered throughout town while this is going on. The other challenge, of course, are the salt storage sheds and the brine solution storage. We're going to have to find a spot for those, and that hasn't been found.
Well, we're talking about the challenge of co-locating or building while operating. Once everything's done, how long do they expect construction on a scaled down or, slightly smaller project to take?
Yeah, so the general timeline, if this article is approved, would be likely a year or so for design, engineering, and these are detailed construction level plans would be generated, like the pipe is going to be 3 inches from this particular wall, that kind of thing. And will likely go out to bid for a construction contractor. The anticipated construction timeline is a year and a half to 2 years.
Okay.
There are, going back to the actual site, in order to maximize the use of that space, and anyone who's been there realizes there's about a 30 feet grading difference between the front of the site and the back of the site, which will require it to be leveled. And there will be a large retaining wall back up against the rail trail. And the concern with that is that is all fill from back when the railroad was put in, several, 150 years ago, probably.
It's nice and clean.
Well, I don't think we're concerned about the environmental potential contaminants in that soil. It's what's the subsoil like,
Right.
And what's supporting the rail trail. Right now, it's sort of this triangular berm, but one side's going to have to be cut off. So there are some significant challenges by having a facility at that site from a construction standpoint.
All right. Well, if I hear you correctly, sometime around mid-2028, if all the signs are good and we get what we're looking for, now we have a site that on Central Street would be vacated, Ben. What's the board thinking about what might be the reuse of that particular property?
Well, we haven't gotten too in-depth into that particular site, but a couple things about it. The first is that obviously there's an existing building there, so that would have to be taken down, but there also is a garage for a fire engine on that particular site. So we'd also have to think about that particular piece. I think personally, again, the board hasn't really gone in depth about this. Personally, I would like to open it up to the town, have sort of a conversation with the town to sort of think about what is a proper use, if it's an existing department, is it moving it to the private sector, thinking about it holistically to sort of see what could be something feasible. But I think at the present time, I would want to make sure that it was, we took everything DPW related and moved it to a single location. There have been some discussions about having some on Central and some on Arch, like a fuel facility at Central Street or something like that. And we have to do what works for the town, but I also feel that putting something like that there would be you'd be using it. You kind of restrict yourself if you wanted to have a future use.
Something just occurred to me. So I'm a resident of Mudville, and I'm hearing this story, and I'm intrigued because I like my DPW in my backyard. My streets get plowed and so forth. But why are we not going to Central Street? What's the barrier on that lot, James?
Basically, the configuration of the lot, there is actually a wetland that goes right between it. It's a small size. Don't quote me on the exact acreage, but I think it's 5 acres or so. But bisecting the lot is a wetlands, and we can't build in it. And so it literally would have to be, and there are actually renderings of this on the town website, sort of office spaces in the front, a bridge, literally a bridge, going to the back where the vehicles and equipment would be, and it just does not make sense from a construction standpoint to put a full facility there at Central Street.
They call it a campus or something. Some kind of a particular term.
I'm glad you brought that up. Something I probably should have mentioned, that if residents are interested in looking into the details of this project further, please go to the town website and click on the project. It has an extensive list of all of the project studies and other information they may find useful that gets into more detail than we can today. But Ben, I want to circle back to you here. You mentioned back in 2023 there was an override for this project. If we move ahead with the Arch Street project and we get a study done, and they report back to you folks sometime in the spring, I would presume, something like that, right? They're going to give you a number. They're going to say it costs X dollars. Can you use the override from 2023?
No.
What are you going to do?
We would have to go back to the voters town meeting to start, and we'd have to go back to the voters for a debt exclusion. The original debt exclusion that we had was tied to Cross Street, and putting it in a new location, and this was intentional at the time by the board, putting it in a new location would require a new round of new vote
Yep,
from
pretty
town
sensible.
meeting to appropriate the money, and the debt exclusion passed by the voters to pay for a substantial portion of the project.
Okay, so in short, the previous project that was authorized, I can't recall the exact amount, was it 30 million?
It was like 30, 32, somewhere around there.
That would be parked over here for
Yeah.
now. There's nobody's being taxed on that, right?
Right.
Haven't spent anything. We're going to be looking at a new study, kind of wiping the slate clean, scaled down.
Yep.
Some challenges on that site, nothing's perfect. But if the report comes back in the spring, should this article pass, and it says this project's going to be $25 million, now that would have to go for a debt override in a vote of the town meeting, as well as the voters.
Right.
Same as last time. And the first vote would be deauthorized effectively.
Effectively. But I would note that, you mentioned that it would be a study. We would be doing design engineering. That's what we're asking for at this time, is to actually have, as James had indicated, like full plans for a
With
facility.
cost estimation?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Got it.
And hoping we have enough by May that we can get in front of the voters at that time.
Which leads me into the next question, James. This project has gone through a lot of modifications. We just talked about that. Weston and Sampson, who's the selected vendor to do a lot of work on our behalf, did some projected costs that Ben and I just talked about on the original study. What do we think the cost will look like for this Arch Street project? Any concept, any scale to discuss publicly?
Yeah, so
Peeking behind the curtain, if you will.
peeking behind the curtain. The good news is a lot of this information is actually on, preliminary information is on the website, as well as several of the presentations that have been provided to the select board. But generally, we're balancing the size of the facility against the costs. If this goes through and it's on Arch Street, we know it has to be a smaller facility. That's a con in terms of trying to have an operation and a facility that's going to be good for the next 70 years, right?
Do we know if the other one was 43,000 square feet? When you say smaller, are we talking half?
We're talking about
75%?
30, right? The latest numbers I've seen about 35,000 square feet.
Right.
And so, but is that, I do want to say that comes with some challenges and some potential risks in that we expect this facility to service the town for the next 50 to 70 years. Certainly the current facilities have done that.
Right.
So we don't want to get too short-sighted on that. But in today's climate, with costs escalating and whatnot, a scaled-down model could work.
Right.
And so in terms of the costs, and I don't have the actual figures in front of me, but we're looking at something in the $40 million range, even with a scaled down. But those estimates include what are called soft costs.
Sure.
And soft costs are basically the catch-all estimates.
Contingencies.
Contingencies, you know what, they start digging out behind the rail trail and they run into ledge, it's got to be blasted and those kinds of things. We will have a better idea of the project costs after we've developed the plans, have the engineering, and go out to bid. We will then obviously know the exact cost.
Sure.
Right.
So I will also say one last thing. All of the estimates that we've been receiving so far are on the highest end, right? You don't want to come in low and say, we need more money. We want to come in at, this is the most it could be. And obviously, everyone's goal is to try to bring it down.
It's a good point, though, James. Voters, I think, instinctively know the longer you wait, the more it's going to cost, and that's proving out here.
Yeah.
We all wish this could have been done sooner.
Yep.
There are reasons why, and it sounds like we've got some answers for that. One thing I did want to touch base with you on, Ben, is I recall after I left the board, there was a lot of dialogue about posting or soliciting vacant property opportunities on the commercial side. This would be property that the town would have to acquire, pay for, not town-owned property, which we're talking about here. A little bit about that, because I know that's part of the journey here, and you folks did a great job making sure that you kicked all the tires on. What's out there to build on? Can you touch on that real quick?
Yeah, so what we did, when we authorized the feasibility study at that time, we also had a non-binding article with town meeting that asked, should we go out to private property and look at private property as a possible solution for this program? And overwhelmingly passed. I believe it was unanimous at the time. So we've sort of had that in the back of our minds as we've gone through this. And we went through an initial iteration, and there was a single location that came forward that just was not cost was too expensive and would have required a lot of work on the space. And Cross Street was an opportunity with cleanup paid for, so we felt that was a good option. Went through a second round, we got no takers, and nobody put forward a request for proposal. And then, because of some of the conversations we were having over some town property, particularly Pinecrest, people were saying, let's do it again. We went back out to bid. We got 4 offers. One dropped out pretty quickly. One was just prohibitively expensive, what they were asking for, and the other 2 seemed like they could be a good fit, and we had some conversation about those. That was the Lowland Street site and then Hopping Brook, and we had some conversations. We had 2 public forums where we discussed those locations.
The board elected to do what with those options effectively? Have you voted no, or are you just dissuaded against them because of acquisition cost?
I think, we were dissuaded, in part because of, certainly resident opposition was pretty strong for the Lowland Street site. The Hopping Brook site was more expensive than the Lowland site with some of the based on some of the estimates they were developing, and it was very far away from downtown, and would create, if we're looking to try to make things more efficient, that's pretty inefficient. So that sort of left us with looking at the existing locations, and we asked Weston and Sampson to go back and see, are there some things that you can do to see maybe like, is 43,000 the right number, or are there places that like, hey, maybe we don't need 2,000 square feet for this, maybe we need 250 or whatever. When we had them do some of that, so we were able to get it down, and that's just on the feasibility study side. When we get to actually putting the plans together, we might even find that there's other value engineering that we can execute as well.
And going back real quick, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but looking at the Central Street property and the reuse, I would imagine the board will be tremendously influenced by the condition of the buildings that are left behind. They're not desirable for reuse and reoccupancy. Probably should be raised, and you'll be looking at a clean slate, similar to what the Flag School property did once the town removed that property. So some views ahead. Folks, as we kind of land this project, Article 15, there's a couple things I just want to check in on. Any feedback from residents in Mudville on this particular location? Because I know you just mentioned it. There's been feedback from various ideas.
No, I've heard a few. I've actually had a few people say that they like them as neighbors. As a matter of fact, I've heard that stated a few times by a few different people. There are a couple houses pretty close by, but not too many. That was one of them. And I have heard a couple of people who have some reservations about that location, which I think is inevitable. I think people are going to have some questions and they want to understand what makes sense. So I'm looking forward to a conversation at town meeting, and I'm sure there will be some more questions that come forward at that time as well.
Ben, wrapping up my questions, are we running out of time to put a project in motion before the existing facilities, as James indicated, really take a turn?
I am not in those facilities as very often, but I toured them actually with you a few years ago, and I would say, I would say that those facilities are well past their useful life, and the employees that work in those facilities deserve to have the things that meet their needs and be able to have clean bathrooms, have locker rooms that they can change into after a long day, have a break room to be able to sit and have a cup of coffee at a table and be able to have meetings with the entire department just before a snowstorm. And they deserve those things, and I think that we need to be moving forward with that. And the best time was yesterday, but we're here, so let's do it today.
Right. You know, I'm just looking at the Article 9, the capital budget. Each year, especially in the fall, the town is asked to fund one-time costs, and inevitably, you know, the schools hit you, the fire department, police. DPW's got a lot of action in the fall town budget because they're asset rich, aren't they? And so in addition to the employees who are job one, safe conditions, the town has a lot of money invested in equipment that's located at both locations that are generally not great for maintaining and keeping those assets in top shape. So it's another factor of looking for a solution sooner rather than later. This particular...
I will add to that. Most of the equipment, highway equipment, is stored outside in the elements. And so you have this fleet that the town has spent millions of dollars on that is sitting out in the elements, baking in the summer sun and getting rained and snowed on throughout the winter.
That includes $93,000 they'll be asked to spend on a heavy-duty dump truck with a plow, another $86,000 for a John Deere turbo terrain cutter, and of course $10,000 for an equipment trailer. If you've ever seen our crews out there working, they take great pride in what they do, and that goes for the water department as well. We want to make sure not only from a work environment for safety that they do have a place for adequately storing, maintaining equipment.
Yeah, we just bought a street sweeper too, which is, I think it was like $350, almost $400,000 just this past May. So that's another example.
Well, in sort of summary, Ben, and I'll give you a chance for a closing here, but my observations are that the board has kind of handled, if you will, a shape-shifting project of high concern to the taxpayers and citizens. You know, there are core functions of government. Public works and water are probably the most important. We want to make sure that we do it thoughtfully. I salute the select board on kind of handling the changing nature of site location, environmental challenges, and certainly citizens' feedback, which I think is primary, and it's why you guys get paid as much as you do. Nevertheless,
Zero.
Nevertheless, we are beholden to what the citizens want. They'll vote on October 20th on Article 15. This will seek to put in motion a study to help Arch Street kind of be considered for a scaled-down solution for a problem that's been going on for about 5 years. Do you have any closing thoughts, Ben, for voters on October 20th?
Yeah, well, I'm going to be up in front of them on October 20th, giving the same pitch. But basically, this is important. We need to get this done as soon as possible. DPW, as you have mentioned, is such a core function of government, and it's the kind of thing when it's working well, you almost don't notice it. But if it's not working well, you notice. You notice that things are happening or not happening that should be going on. And it's very important that we take care of our employees, we take care of our fleet, and we take care of our residents. And the DPW is a critical function within the town that needs to be addressed. And the existing facilities do not meet the needs of the community and need to be replaced to meet those needs now and into the future.
Thank you. Very well said. I want to thank you, Ben, and thank you, James, for coming in and join us.
Thanks for
talk
having us.
about Article 15. Folks will have a chance to join the rest of town meeting on October 20th at the high school at 7 o'clock. Babysitting is available. Hope to see you there, and thanks for listening to this episode of Just Thinking.